All right, it's 11:30. Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here. Next slide, please. I wanted to welcome you to our Monday Milk and Cookies. If you're logged in, thank you for taking time out of your Monday morning to join us, especially those of you who are on the West Coast. That includes our guest of honor, Barney Saltzberg. You'll meet him in a second. By the way, for those who haven't turned into a little bit earlier, that last song was an original composition by Barney. He is he does many things and is good at many things. I am Lynette Kim, a senior marketing manager at Astra Books for Young Readers. Next slide, please. But before we get started and move on to our regularly scheduled programming, I wanted to quickly mention 3 books that I'm really excited about coming out this summer, starting with One Cool Duck. King of Cool, this is the first in a new early reader graphic chapter book series by Mike Petrick. Duck and the gang love all things cool like skateboards and video games and fun catchphrases. But when a new kid comes to town, they learn that the coolest thing of all just might be kindness. This book has some of the most vibrant art you'll ever see, and you can hand it to kids who like books like Narwhal and Jelly. And look for book 2, The Far Out Fort, coming this fall. Next, we have The Love Report, another launch of a series. It's a manga-inspired novel for tweens. Lola and Grace are best friends who have questions about tween romance, like why do some couples work, why don't others work? To figure it out, they decide they're going to interview and record observations about their junior high classmates. And they come out discovering maybe a little bit more about female friendships and about each other. This is a stylish, addictive read. It's actually a translation of a French graphic novel by creators Becca and Maya. We're really excited about it. Next slide, Papa's Magical Wardrobe Clock. A little bit about the author. The multi-hyphenate Jesus Trejo is a comedian who's had his own Showtime comedy special. He's on the Netflix show Mr. Iglesias, and he hosts an LA-based celebrity taco tasting show. He and Chicana artist Eliza Kings teamed up for a joyful, proud homage to everyday immigrant working class life and family, drawn from the author's own childhood. And the result is this hilarious picture book in the vein of Pete the Cat and No David. And it stars our new favorite picture book, Little Jesus. In this book, the mischievous little Jesus goes along with his father on a landscaping job. And when given a big responsibility guarding what his papa calls a magical water jug clock, he has a big lesson to learn about resources like time and water. We love this book. We're proud to be publishing it in both English and Spanish. Now on to another book that I adore, and it's the reason why we're all here today. We'll introduce Barney Saltzberg in a moment, but really his is a name that I'm sure a lot of you already know. He's the author of Beautiful Oops, which has sold around 600,000 copies and climbing because it's been in print for 12 years and it just continues to sell like gangbusters. Peekaboo Kisses is part of the Touch and Feel series, sold over 1 million copies. And one of these is not like the others, book and board book, and has been translated into 6 languages. But selfishly, what I'm really excited about is his latest and greatest, A Delicious Story. I'm going to turn it over to Jill Davis to introduce Barney and to tell you a little bit about A Delicious Story.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jill Davis. I'm the editorial director of Hippo Park, part of Astra Books for Young Readers. Thank you, Lynette. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Barney. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We're super excited. This book has just been one of the most fun books to work on. And I think it's because it's been so collaborative. Working on this presentation for you all today just has reminded us what fun it's been, and all the places we've been and all the places we're going with this book. Barney is a joy to work with, and you know, he and I both had, you know, a really different idea about what this book was, and it came together beautifully. So let me introduce you to Barney, and then we'll talk all about the whys, the whats, the whos. We'll read the story to you, and then later we'll have time to talk about the outtakes for the covers. We'll talk about the pacing of the book. We'll talk about why it's important, and we'll even maybe have time for a little sing-along. So without further ado,
look at this! It's a book! No, it's a story. A delicious story. What makes it so delicious? Well, maybe you should open it up and find out. It's coming to bookstores this June. Well, I can't wait till June. Well, you'll just have to. A delicious story by Barney Saltzberg coming from Hippo Park in June.
Our art director Amelia Mack is here today too, and we're not gonna put the spotlight on her unless she wants to share anything later. But she was oh my God, the three of us in this book, so much fun, so much work. We are going to read the book to you now. Hello.
What are you doing here?
I'm looking for a story.
Oh, I haven't seen one.
Wait, isn't this a book?
Yes, this is a book, but there's no story.
How is that possible?
I don't want to talk about it.
What happened to the story?
There were pictures too.
There was a story and pictures?
It had everything, a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Where did everything go?
Don't you think it's nice and peaceful here?
It's okay, but it'd be much better with a story.
Stop and listen. Isn't the quiet refreshing?
I suppose.
So why would we need anything else?
Wait a minute. You're trying to trick me. What happened to the story?
I couldn't help myself. I was hungry.
You ate the story and the pictures?
Yes, and what a delicious story it was.
Oh,
Maybe I can make up a new one for you.
I would like that.
Give me a minute to think.
Okay. How's it going?
I'm not so sure.
I didn't know it was so hard to make up a story.
Well, it is when you're staring at me. How do you expect me to make up a story while you watch?
Well, if you hadn't eaten the story, you wouldn't have to make up a new one.
I have an idea. I need to be alone when I create. Alone, by myself.
Now I don't have a story and I don't have you.
Wait, that's it. Once there was a little mouse who was looking for a story. But a big mouse had eaten it all up, so there was no story to be found. And even though the little mouse didn't find a story, he did make a new friend. The end.
That is a story, but I don't want it to end there.
Where do you want it to end?
I like surprise endings.
Surprise!
Hooray!
That was a surprise ending.
To a great story. Can we hear it again? Please, 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 please.
Once there was a little mouse and a dragon who were looking for
A delicious story with a surprise ending. Is that the end of the book?
yes, but we can read it again.
Will there be cookies?
And this was for Ron Maurer, Andy Manpearl, Richard Ross, and Barbara Botner, 4 amazing teachers who encouraged me to tell stories. And we can read it again.
The end or the beginning?
So can we talk about the fact that this is an 80-page picture book, which my wife, when she heard that, got nervous, but you can see it's a quick read. And Jill Davis is, if I had a bioengineer and editor, it would be her. I didn't think there were people like her on the planet anymore. I'm old school. I come from a time when we could work on a story for a really long time and figure it out. And not a whole lot of editors are able to do that because they're under such pressure. Jill has found a way to open the world up, and I had never dreamed of an 80-page picture book, but she felt that this book needed more room. And we kept enlarging the story and making it longer and longer. And even once it was done, we had looked at our 3rd proof. Jill said, it needs an extra beat. And I thought, this is amazing. How often does that happen? We got to just add this into the pattern. And I love it because it now feels like it's not only is it the ending, but it's the prompt to start over again.
Yeah, I think that I had a lot of experience with picture books ending and kids saying, is that the end? And that uncomfortable feeling that it didn't feel quite final without having to write the word the end. So we all, Amelia Mack, our art director, and I and Barney, we just sort of sat around and thought, they could come out of those little checkers. And we thought this was something. We can't wait to hear what kids think. And then go back to Sarah, if you could go back to the fat mouse on the title page. So we had remember Barney, remember Amelia, we had the similar experience where the book started just with the 2 of them saying, what are you doing here? And it happened the same way in reverse. We say, well, this doesn't quite feel like a beginning. Well, when did he eat the book? And was he full? And how did, what's the backstory here? So we just thought about, I think we thought about Templeton from Charlotte's Web. And I pulled up a picture of Templeton laying there holding his belly, and I sent it to Barney. And as with Barney, who is probably the fastest reacting human on Earth, within about 10 seconds, he had sent this. And we knew that after kids read this, they would be able to go back to the beginning and be able to look at the mouse and say, oh, okay, that's when he had eaten too much and he was full and happy. And then we added a few more beats to the beginning. So that's
this team. It's been a joy to do this. I'm so happy with the way this came out, and you guys.
But it wasn't always. This wasn't always the story, was it, Barney?
Well, it looks like it when you look at it. You go, oh, this must have taken you no time to come up with all of it, let alone the title. So we have a couple of pictures to show some of the process, because it was not a straight line. So I got, after I did Oops and I did this book, Andrew, Drew, and Drew, it really started I started exploring the physicality of a book, the actual book with two hardcovers and or a hardcover and paper in the middle. I'm a huge fan of Emily Gravett, who really planted some seeds in my brain as to ways to play with what's inside a book. And I was thinking how unusual it would be to open a book and have nothing in it, and what story could come out of it. And my brain went initially to a bookworm because that just seemed like the perfect character, and then it felt a little cliche. This story, again, was playing. I just photographed a book and kept drawing on it and seeing how a story would unfold. And it just felt, this particular version, too close to touch. Was it Touch Here? The book, I'm blanking on the title. Yeah.
Press.
So then I switched, I went back to a mouse. I thought that's another character that would nibble pages. And this was a solo mouse talking to the reader. And it's a little bizarre. It was out of the blue. And I wanted to play with kind of graphic shapes that would evolve throughout the story and have the story go with it. But it just felt something was missing. And I somehow got this idea that there should be another mouse coming into the story, and then a conversation would unfold between these two characters. And that just felt way stronger and a much more soulful story. And then what I sent to Jill, I think the next picture shows that cover. I had submitted it as this, a story, and mouse changed a little bit since then, but Jill had a lot of ideas, and Amelia had a lot of ideas as an art director who came from the heavens as for me to work with, and kind of nursed this book and pulled it out of me. So let's go through some next pictures. You'll see some of the different titles and design ideas.
Yeah.
Well, Jill, what happened with a story?
No, I was just going to say, when I first presented it to our sales force in the first launch, it was a story. And I remember talking passionately, almost making myself cry about the connection between these two characters on the front. So it was called A Story, with these two guys. And we made sure, I remember, making sure that telling Barney I wanted them to have a connection, and Amelia, and I thought it was really interesting how he could make them look at each other sort of while they're both facing in the same direction. And it's that connection that I've been looking for in a book that is a conversation. And that's what this book was. And it was really, really important that that connection, because I feel like, a good book that is a conversation that models talking back and forth. I really thought this was a book about disappointment. I thought this was a book about how does a parent deal with screwing up and having to tell their kid, I screwed up, but I'm going to pretend I didn't. And, and that's where it really hit me hard. And then at one point I said to Barney, oh, I love this idea that, two characters can talk and work out disappointment. And he said, oh, that's not what it's about. It's about the creative process. And I said, oh, it's about the creative process. Do tell.
Well, I think at this point it ended up being encompassing both concepts for sure.
Yeah, but
so we came up with, after we realized A Story was not going to be the title, I came up with this. I thought it was just a fun title, and then it really became, everyone who looked at it thought, well, this was clearly a food book.
Oh yeah,
so
A Story was rejected because of metadata. They said that you would never be able to find it anywhere.
Oh, wow.
So that's why we got rid of Story and we went to Scrumptious, because one day Barney just woke up and said scrumptious, and we tried, and Amelia tried to curve the word scrumptious, in all these different ways, and I don't remember. It just didn't stick.
It was a lot of letters to work with. Yeah. The other thing I'd love to mention about the process too is you can see in some of these cover samples, we have these were all rough kind of sketches or photographs that we were just using as kind of concepts, but the idea of the big mouse having eaten it and like what makes it look like it's been eaten. And we went down that path for a long time. And then did this look more like teeth, bite marks? Did it rip, or did you need teeth marks, or would it just be more messy, like rips, or like, all this kind of stuff? And then like, would that carry through into the end papers, like having words on ripped pieces kind of trailing off evidence of the previous story? And then ultimately we just decided that it just really was about stripping it down as much as possible. And like, we just got rid of all reference to eating. And it's just, yes, this is a blank page. Just take, the mouse ate it all. There is no trace. We're starting from scratch here. And so it was about building it. It was all about building the story from scratch, from nothing. And that was, and then ultimately, I think that clarity helped us kind of carry through to the end. So.
There's a bunch more when Amelia.
There was a point where I
journey. Well, can you go to the next slide, Sarah? Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh, so this one I just it's kind of ironic we didn't end up with this cover, but I taught for 8 years at UCLA an extension class in writing and illustrating, and one of my assignments was to create a cover and bring it to a local children's bookstore and put it out face out with the other books just to see if it popped. And we had a contest. I brought in all the covers, and the staff at the store voted, and this is the one that we decided to try, and it popped, and just ironically didn't use it. But that's what this shot is. This is Children's Book World in Los Angeles.
And next.
Now this is another title cover we didn't use. Again, for me, it evoked too much food with a fork and a knife. Torn paper.
Yeah. And this is when
I actually shredded up paper and tried it. It was too messy.
But yeah, this is when Amelia really sat down, I think, for something like 14 hours straight and deconstructed the whole thing. And she can talk about it more if she wants, but what I think we finally landed on was that it was really the connection between the two of them.
Yeah. And
then the way the word delicious looked, she showed us how important that was. And it was great.
And she picked the pink off the noses, which I love. It's a delicious story, and I think you might be able to handle that. So the chorus goes, if there's a mouse inside a book. If there's a mouse inside a book, but there's nothing else to see, in all probability, it's a delicious story.
Delicious story.
Wait just a little minute. How could a book have nothing in it? No pictures, not a single word. You might be thinking this is absurd. Well, you're in for a little surprise. Right there before your eyes, there's a new story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you might make a new friend. If there's a mouse inside the book, and there's nothing else to see, in all probability, it's a delicious story.
It's a delicious story.
In all probability, it's a delicious story.
Delicious story.
That was perfect.